Welcome to Dangerous African Confession HD, the channel that exposes what others are afraid to say. In today's powerful confession, we meet Sharon, a widow whose husband died serving a church that disowned her. But when she finds his hidden diary, what she uncovers will shake everything. If you've ever wondered how deep some churches have gone into darkness, this video will open your eyes. Watch till the end, because this story is not just about grief. It's about truth, exposure, and redemption. Before we dive in, make sure you join our Telegram community, where we share exclusive content, real deliverance cases, and connect with thousands uncovering the truth. The link is in the description below, or search the name Dangerous African Confessions. Let us go and listen to her.
They buried my husband without honor. No choir sang. No pastor wept. No church banner waved beside his casket. The man who once stood beside the prophet, preaching, fasting, casting out demons, doing night vigils, leading prayers, was now laid in the ground like a forgotten stranger. And the worst part, the very church he had dedicated his entire life to, did not show up. Not even the prophet himself. The same prophet who once declared, "This man is my right hand. My Elisha. The one I trust with my life." That prophet didn't send a condolence message. Not even a phone call. I was holding my baby. Our 6-month-old daughter. I was breaking. They dragged me out of the church building, like a stranger, when I had gone there to find answers. Like I didn't matter. Like my husband never mattered. Some even talked about the fact that I know what killed my husband. Others said, accused my husband of causing his own death by rebelling against spiritual covering. But let me tell you something, I didn't rebel. He didn't rebel. He died protecting their secrets. The night after the burial, I sat alone in our small bedroom. The kind we lived in for 5 years while giving all our money to a kingdom work. As I packed away his clothes, I reached for a worn-out leather jacket. It was the one he always wore during deliverance services. The one soaked in oil. The one the prophet said was anointed with fire. But tucked deep in the inner lining, I found something else. A diary. Not a journal. A confession. Its first words were,
"If you're reading this, it means I'm either dead, or I finally gathered the courage to run."
My hands trembled. My legs couldn't hold me. I collapsed onto the floor. For 5 years, I stood beside a man I thought I knew. A man who prayed until his voice cracked, who wept during worship, who fasted for 21 days straight, who slept on church benches because he believed in sacrifice. But that diary, it was the beginning of an unraveling, a dark corridor of secrets I never imagined. Secrets that started with a blood covenant. Secrets involving late-night rituals with the prophet. Secrets that could burn a ministry to the ground. And as I flipped the pages, page after page, I realized something horrifying. My husband didn't just serve the church. He served a God the church never mentioned. The real reason he died wasn't sickness. He was sacrificed. Sacrificed to keep the prophet's secret safe. The first few pages were shaky, like his hand trembled while writing. But it was his handwriting. I knew it. I'd seen him write sermon notes in the same style, simple and purposeful.
"Dear Sharon, if you're the one reading this, then I'm sorry. You married a man you didn't fully know. I tried to protect you from this world, from the things I became part of. But now I see that silence is what kills us."
That was the first paragraph. I froze. My throat tightened. What didn't I know? What had he kept from me all these years? He went on and said,
"When I joined the church, I was sincere. I wanted God. I wanted to serve. But the deeper I got, the more I realized this wasn't just a church, it was a system. A spiritual business. The prophet was not just a prophet. He was something else."
He wrote of a private retreat the prophet invited him to in Nigeria.
He took us to a mountain revival. But it wasn't just any revival. We were told not to bring phones. We were blindfolded for the last stretch. And when we arrived, it wasn't a mountain, it was a compound. Hidden. Guarded. Inside were men in white robes. Not praying. Chanting. Pouring red substances over black stones. We were introduced to the spirit of echo. A name I had never heard. A spirit they claimed was God's secret weapon to empower end-time prophets. We were each given a new name. Mine was Talak. I was told never to speak it unless summoned during midnight prayers. They drew a symbol on my back with a blade, something that burned for weeks. The prophet smiled as it happened. He said, "Now you carry real power."
My hands were trembling. I couldn't breathe. He continued that.
After that retreat, things changed. I started seeing things. I could call out names in church. I laid hands and people fell. But I was empty inside. It was not the Holy Spirit, it was something else. Something that made me aggressive, anxious, addicted to power. Then came the dreams, blood, snakes, women calling me in my sleep. And every time I told the prophet, he said, "You're evolving. Don't resist it." These are signs of spiritual maturity.
He went on to describe spiritual assignments. Night visits to cemeteries for prayer. Midnight fasts that involved drinking sanctified oil, which he later learned contained animal blood. Spiritual intimacy sessions where members were told to engage in intercourse with anointed vessels to release prophetic energy. And then I reached this part.
Sharon, the worst day of my life was the night I was asked to choose someone I loved to prove my loyalty to the source of our power. I chose you. But I never followed through. I made a vow instead that if anything ever happened to me, I would leave you this diary. And I'd pray God shows you mercy.
I screamed. I slammed the diary shut. I was shaking, sobbing, pacing. Everything felt like a lie. My marriage. My husband's ministry. My church. My faith. How many more knew about this? How many prophets, apostles, bishops were dancing on altars powered by this same evil? But this diary wasn't just his confession. It was my awakening. Because on the last page, scrawled in a rush, I saw,
"They know I want to leave. If anything happens to me, it's not God. It's them."
I stared at those words. And in that moment, one thing became clear: my husband didn't die because he was weak. He died because he tried to break free. And now, I was holding the evidence they thought was buried with him. After reading the diary, I couldn't sleep. My body was physically exhausted, but my spirit was wide awake, on fire with fear, confusion, and a rising anger I couldn't contain. I kept hearing his words on repeat. I needed answers. And I needed them fast. The next morning, I returned to the diary. My hands trembled as I flipped to the bookmark section titled, "The Seven Seals of Power." It sounded biblical, but what I read next had nothing to do with the Bible.
Seal 1, Blood Oath. Each of us was required to slice our palms and drip our blood into the prophet's altar bowl. That bowl never left his private chamber. He said our blood became a permanent offering, binding us to the altar until death. Seal 2, Sexual Covenant. We were told that divine energy had to be transferred through union. Every new level of power required us to sleep with the gatekeeper, a woman appointed by the prophet. We were told this pleased the spirits and activated our next dimension. Seal 3, the mouth seal. We took an oath of silence. Anyone who spoke would go mad or die in sleep. One man, Elijah, tried to leave and started confessing. He was found dead 2 days later with his tongue blackened. Seal 4, the covenant of exchange. For every promotion, there had to be a loss. You'd sacrifice something dear, money, relationships, even people. The deeper we went, the more costly the sacrifices became.
That's when I saw a name that broke me all over again, our first son, Emmanuel. Tears flooded my eyes. My chest burned. This wasn't just deception, it was organized wickedness. He continued.
I never told you, Sharon, but Emmanuel was a sacrifice. The prophet said someone close to us would go in exchange for a fresh wind in ministry. 3 weeks later, our son got sick and passed. I wept like a father, but inside, I knew. I knew why.
I clutched the diary to my chest and cried until I couldn't breathe. All the times I had blamed myself. All the nights I held our baby's clothes and screamed at God. My husband never said a word. But now I understood. It wasn't just sickness. It was sacrifice.
Seal 5, covering by the ring. We all wore a silver ring marked with the initials SOD, Sons of the Depth. It wasn't just jewelry, it was our spiritual anchor. If we removed it, the spirits would attack. If we lost it, our power would start to decay. Seal 6, submission of the wife. This one was brutal. The prophet demanded that our wives be spiritually aligned, meaning they either joined us or were kept blind. Wives who asked too many questions were considered threats. Some were sent away. Others disappeared. Seal 7, the death seal. Each of us had to write a death pledge. A letter, to be delivered upon our passing, saying we died in the faith. The prophet keeps these letters. They are signed, sealed, and used to erase suspicion. No one asks questions. No one doubts the cause.
I remembered his ring. He never took it off. Even in the hospital. Even on the night he died. That explains so much. How he'd suddenly become emotionally distant. Why he stopped letting me attend prayer meetings. Why I always felt like a stranger in my own home. I was numb. This wasn't just spiritual manipulation. This was a well-crafted cult. With rituals. Sacrifices. Layers of control masked behind scriptures and prophecies. And my husband, my sweet, sincere, gifted husband, was caught in its web. The worst part. He tried to break the covenant. He stopped going to certain ritual nights. He started fasting on his own. He began questioning the prophet privately. That's when the threats began. One of the last entries read,
I'm being followed. Even in the hospital, I saw the same man twice. They are watching me. Watching us. I regret everything, but I need you to know the truth before they bury it.
That night, I stared at the ceiling, the diary clutched in my hands. The pain was unbearable. But something stronger than pain began to rise inside me, a hunger for truth. And I knew then, this wasn't just my story to grieve. It was a legacy to expose. I hadn't slept in 2 days. My husband's diary sat on the dining table, open to the page that ruined everything I thought I knew. The rituals. The sacrifices. The lies. Every word pierced deeper than the last. I had cried until no more tears would come. But grief had given way to something else, righteous rage. How could this man, the prophet, stand before congregations, prophesy in tongues, lay hands on children, and yet demand blood? How could he preach life, while orchestrating death behind closed doors? I had questions. And I needed answers. But what I didn't expect was for him to come to me first. It was just after 9 p.m. The baby had finally fallen asleep, and I sat in the living room, flipping through the last pages of the diary, when I heard a knock. 3 hard, deliberate taps. My heart pounded in my chest like a war drum. I rose slowly and peeked through the curtain. My breath caught in my throat. It was him. The prophet. Dressed in his usual white kaftan, face calm, hands folded in front of him like a saint. But I didn't see a man of God. I saw the face my husband described in his diary. The one who demanded silence. The one who fed on loyalty and fear. The one who orchestrated my son's death in the name of power. I opened the door, but only slightly. "Sharon," he said softly. "May I come in?" My body trembled. "No," I whispered, voice shaking. He tilted his head, confused but patient. "I've come to pray with you." I sensed unrest in your spirit. Unrest. The arrogance of it made my blood boil. "I know what you did," I said. "And I know what you made him do." There was a flicker. Just for a second. The mask slipped. But then he smiled. "Sharon, grief can make the mind see things that aren't there. You're vulnerable. This is exactly why I've come, to cover you in prayer." "You covered us in death," I snapped. The prophet's eyes narrowed. "You've been reading things that weren't meant for you. And yet here I am." I stepped forward, voice rising. "Do you know what it's like to hold your baby's clothes, not knowing he was a sacrifice to boost your ministry?" He flinched, but didn't deny it. "You used my husband. You twisted his faith. And now he's dead, and you weren't even at his funeral." Silence. Then, calmly, he said, "You are treading on dangerous ground, Sharon. There are things even your husband didn't understand. This was bigger than him. Bigger than you. If you dig too deep, you may not survive it." That was it. That was the threat. But something in me, maybe grief, maybe divine courage, rose to meet him. "I'm already buried," I said. "But now, I'm ready to rise. And I will burn every lie with the truth you tried to bury." He took a slow step back. "Be careful, daughter. There are forces you're not equipped to fight." I shut the door without another word. I collapsed to the floor afterward, trembling. Not from fear, but from adrenaline. I had faced the monster and lived. But I knew what this meant now. I was no longer just a widow. I was a target. And if he had come all the way here, in the dark of night, it meant he knew I had the diary. It meant he knew his kingdom was crumbling.
What you've just heard is a mirror. A warning. And a wake-up call. Sharon's story reminds us that loyalty to men is not loyalty to God. Always seek the truth, even when it's buried. And if you've ever experienced something similar, know this: your voice matters. Speak up. God is still a God of justice. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories like this. We continue her story in our next episode. Take care and see you soon.